Welcome everybody to the PFF College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Galina, alongside Mr. Tony, Anthony Treash, PFF Tony, PFF Anthony, PFF Treash. Welcome back to the PFF College Football Podcast, Mr. Treash.
Yeah, thank you for having me back there, Seth. I go by many names. Those are only consist of like maybe 10%.
I could have kept going, you know.
We could, but we probably couldn't say a lot of them. But yeah, we could have kept going there. But I'm doing pretty good, man. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. Weather's good. I got blinds.
Wait, is it really good? Is it really good in Canada right now?
Yeah, it gets so like we have two extremes. Like it gets, for 5 months of the year, it's like extremely cold. And then for 5 months of the year, it is extremely hot and humid, and we're in the hot and humid part.
Mm.
I feel like what's Cincinnati like?
It was rainy today, but it's going to be high of 90. But I tell you what, the dry heat, that's what I wish I was in right now. Dry heat, no humidity. I would kill for that.
You know what? Let's get off topic here for a second. Can you explain dry heat to me? Because I feel like I've never been to like Arizona or like like Las Vegas or that part of the world or any other type of dry heat type place. I've only ever been to like New Orleans and like South Florida and like Montreal.
Like the disgusting
it's
parts.
Swamp, right? So like,
yeah.
I'm curious what does dry heat feel like?
I don't even know how to describe it. It just feels so much better. Like you don't hate yourself when you go outside. Like I'm like in Cincinnati,
I hate myself
when it's 90 degrees.
Like literally anywhere I am. So that's a whole nother. Maybe I should talk about that with my therapist.
Yeah, we might have to. That's another topic of discussion. That's a whole other podcast episode. But no, I mean it's like I don't know how to describe it. It's different. You're gonna get pan fried. Your skin's just gonna blister, but it just feels so much better. It's so much more relaxing. Get a nice beverage in your hand. You're just ready to rock.
Do you get? The only question I have, and for people watching this on YouTube, you'll understand why, is do you get tanned faster in dry heat rather than humid heat? This is the only thing I need. Like, I'm not really an outdoors type person, but I would like to just tan quicker.
I am the worst person to ask about this. Okay. I have the worst skin ever. I will literally fry when it's 50 degrees outside. It's absurd. My skin cannot handle anything. It's bad. It is so bad. So I'm the worst person to ask about that.
All right. Well, then I guess let's get off the weather then and let's talk about something you do know.
That was an absolute heater of an introduction. I'm sure so many people
they've already turned it off. I'm sure all of our fans in Slovakia are still listening. All of our fans in Austria and Slovakia and the Czech Republic, they're still listening. Shout out to those countries. Shout out to our listeners in Eastern Europe. Let's get to something that we both know very well. College football quarterbacks. We are going to give you guys the list of the top 10 returning quarterbacks via the PFF grades and all that stuff. And we're going to talk about each one as we go through it. And then we're going to give our list of a few sleepers and a few guys we think are overrated also. So before we start, I want full transparency. Do you have like the 2-3 guys? I didn't ask you this before, it just hit me. Do you have the 2-3 guys that we got wrong last year that you'd like to talk about?
Ooh. Well, I mean, I think Kyle Trask is interesting, even though he's off to the NFL.
Yeah.
I think early on in the season, it was so weird because I think he read my article and said, all right, I'm going to show this prick what's up.
Yeah.
And then he turned it on from there on out, and then I have to give him props because the dude absolutely lit it up. Kedon Slovis is the one that broke my heart, and I think your heart too. Jarrett Deggy, West Virginia quarterback. Those two, I mean, more so Kedon Slovis. There's just so much potential there. Like the dude can be the best quarterback in college football, but he just has some wildly forceful throws and bad decisions on tape routinely, and he cannot protect the ball. His pocket awareness is he can maneuver around the pocket exceptionally well. It's just holding onto the ball. I mean, he fumbles way too often there. But the accuracy, I mean, that's Joe Burrow-esque accuracy. That's how good it is. So I think that was probably the most disappointing that we got wrong last year. But I think everybody got him wrong just because I think everybody expected him to be that top-tier guy. And I wouldn't be surprised if he eventually became that this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't.
I think the two that I got wrong on like either side of the spectrum. One is Tyler Shuck from Oregon. And it's just like, okay, maybe I should.
Wait, hang on. I don't think you did get him wrong, because apparently he's going to be the number one overall.
All right, of course, yeah. When he goes number one in the NFL draft next year, then I'll be right all along. But it's one of those issues where, and I'll never learn, but you really shouldn't extrapolate off of like 20 throws in like mop-up duty. At least like if you have a guy who maybe at least started one game and went through a week of game planning and all that stuff and played against the other team's ones, then maybe you can extrapolate off like one game or something. But like extrapolating off of 25 throws, mopping up from Justin Herbert, like that's not, you're not gonna get a lot of these things right. And I was totally wrong about Tyler Shuck. And I'll say honestly the opposite, and we'll talk about him later, is Sam Howell. I didn't think that he would produce the same as he did as a true freshman last year as a true sophomore. And he did. Obviously, shaky at the beginning of the season, and then he kind of turned it on as the season went on. And I expected a dip in play that didn't happen. Now, I will predict it again in his true junior year. We'll get to that. But yeah, so those two guys, like I think I wasn't as high on Sam Howell as I probably should have been, and I was too high on Oregon and now Texas Tech's Tyler Shuck. But let's get into the rankings. So
hang on. I got to interrupt you. Did you see this tweet on Twitter highlighting the odds to be the number one overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft?
I did not.
Yeah, good guy, Thor Nystrom. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. Posted a picture, a screenshot. I'm not sure where the source is from, but he has top 10 odds to be the first overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft. Can you take a wild guess at the top 5?
Rattler.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Ding.
Number 1.
Kevin Thibodeau.
Number 2.
Evan Neal.
Ooh, no, not even in the top 10.
Okay, so Sam Howell.
Mm-hmm.
3. Oof, this is a tough one. Wow, off the top of my head, I can't even. It's a good question. Is it Slovis?
No, so Slovis is 8. 4
right.
is Malik Willis.
Oh, of course.
And number 5, Tyler Shuck, Texas Tech.
You know what? Like, and I've been like putting off like rewatching Oregon season. Because we're gonna have to write about it for the College Football Preview magazine that's coming out in 2 months. But boy, I'm not excited for it because I know it wasn't very good. And I think, we looked at what Justin Herbert did last year in Los Angeles compared to what he did in Oregon, and maybe there's something there in the water that's just holding down quarterbacks. But I mean, it's 2 different offensive coordinators, because they had Joe Moorhead come in and run a completely different offense than Arroyo did with Herbert. So like, I don't even know. I don't really see it with Shuck after this season. Like I said, I saw it in small bitty glimpses in 2019 in mop-up duty, but then in 2020 it just wasn't good. Like, that's even the story. It just wasn't good. Texas Tech has produced some pretty good graded quarterbacks over the past couple seasons. So maybe the offense will help him get back to the level that I think people think, but I don't.
He's going to have a Jameis year. I keep saying this. It's going to be a Jameis year. It's going to be 30 for 30. He's going to make some unbelievable throws. I mean, he's flashed the arm talent, but he's going to throw so many interceptions.
It's just the decision making was just not good. All right, well, let's get into the top 10. First one is, I don't think anyone in the world doesn't have him as the top quarterback returning. And that's Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma. So when you turn on the film, what do you see from Spencer Rattler?
Yeah, and I know you don't feel the same way here. And I don't think a few people feel the same way. I've seen some past coaches say the same thing that I wrote about. And I think he does kind of remind me a little bit of Texas Tech Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, there are some very big differences in there. Mahomes, he was very good at evading sacks. They both broke the pocket like clockwork, made some unbelievable throws outside of the pocket, out of structure. And I think that one of the big difference that also stands out too is that Spencer Rattler's not as type of gunslinger, right? So with Patrick Mahomes, the reason why he wasn't the consensus number 1 guy, it's like can this guy actually, I mean, this guy's going to throw like 40 interceptions because he just completely threw the ball to the other team so many times. Spencer Rattler did not really do that as much. I mean, obviously there were some issues inside the pocket with his footwork, led to some poorly thrown balls. They had some questionable reads every now and again. But, the fact that he sustained that level of Oklahoma success, he had a 92.5 PFF grade, which was the highest we've ever seen from either a true freshman or a redshirt freshman. He was a redshirt freshman. I mean, just the combination of the accuracy, the arm talent. This guy's the real deal. I think he's going to be I would be shocked if he did not win the Heisman next year. I think Oklahoma should be kind of viewed as just as up there with Alabama and Clemson for the national title, Ohio State, whoever you want to name it. I think they have the 5th best odds right now. I would smash that. I think they're my pick right now to win it just because they're pretty good at every other position. But most importantly, they have clear-cut the best quarterback in college football that can operate inside and outside of structure.
Do you think that the play outside of structure is going to continue? And, it's amazing. Like every time you broke the pocket in 2020, you're just like, as I was going through the tape, you're just like expecting a ball to be thrown inaccurately. And it just like never happened. And he did a great job of finding open receivers after he broke the pocket, and both throwing, I would say, across his body and throwing the ball accurately, but also being able to fit the balls in on the sideline. Again, we're just talking about out of structure here. I thought it was spectacular. So again, my question is, so yes, it was great. My question is, do you see it continuing, or, if it doesn't, do you see his play from inside the pocket, kind of him improving, evolving from inside the pocket? So whereas he doesn't need to be hitting these throws all the time outside the pocket like he did, he can just like Mahomes has become in Kansas City. Mahomes is now this he's a savant inside the pocket, and he really only moves out of the pocket when he has to now because he's so good on in timing, so good in structure. That do you see Rattler becoming that type of person? If you're saying he's got that Patrick Mahomes in it. I know you said Texas Tech Patrick Mahomes, and I'm talking about Kansas City Patrick Mahomes. But do you see maybe that sort of evolution for Spencer Rattler?
Yeah, he's definitely going to improve inside the pocket because considering that was his first full year starting, it's typical to see those kind of undisciplined mistakes from a first-year starting quarterback. We definitely saw that early on, but yet he still finished the season top 10 in both positively graded and negatively graded throw rate, which the only other 3 quarterbacks that did, they're off in the NFL. They were first-round picks this past season with Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones. And I think he is going to – the PFF grading may not reflect it so much outside of structure because he put up a bonkers grade. But I think from the raw numbers perspective, your passing yards, your touchdowns, I think he will improve just because he had so many dropped balls. It was frustrating. Really, you go back to that Iowa State game that they lost, that pretty much knocked them out of CFP contention. There were 2 third-down plays that Spencer Rattler had, 2 incredibly just perfectly thrown balls that were dropped that would have been, setting him up for a touchdown or would have scored him a touchdown. Either of those would have been caught. They probably would have been in the CFP. We're talking about a whole different situation with Spencer Rattler, but instead we're kind of, and I said Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech too, because it's both stylistically and situationally, just because there were some ugly moments that people just could not ignore with Patrick Mahomes. Same with Spencer Rattler, the game sealing interceptions against Iowa State and Kansas State, that benching against, I think it was Texas. But at the same time, just the elite playmaking out of structure, the arm talent's ridiculous, the release, all of that there. I think he's going to improve from a raw numbers perspective outside of the pocket, out of structure. But more importantly, he is going to play more disciplined ball inside of the pocket.
DraftKings Sportsbook is giving you a chance to lower the over-under on a featured playoff game. That's probably the only way I would ever win a bet. All players who place a bet on the featured basketball game will have a hand in lowering the over-under on the game. That's right. For every 1,500 players who bet the over on the select game, the over-under will drop by 1 point. DraftKings is safe and secure and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code PFF when you sign up to hammer the over. For every 1,500 people that bet the over in the feature game, the line will decrease by 1 point. Yes, this is your chance to improve the odds of the over hitting. So tell your friends and family this is a team effort. Hammer the over and improve your odds of doubling your money. That's promo code PFF for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, Pennsylvania only. Restrictions apply. Max $25 wager, one per customer. Offer ends May 23rd, 2021. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In these uncertain times, life is full of questions like, when should I start thinking about life insurance? But however difficult these questions may be, Western and Southern can help you answer them. Backed by over 130 years of experience, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind. Western and Southern Financial Group, life insurance, retirement, and investments. Compensated endorser, products issued by member companies of Western and Southern Financial Group, Cincinnati, Ohio. I want you guys to remember that if you are listening to this PFF podcast, we have other great podcasts on our PFF Podcast Network, which covers, of course, the NFL, fantasy football, and this show, college. So you can recap the NFL draft with PFF Mike and PFF Austin on 2-for-1 Drafts. Probably one of the best podcasts out there, in my opinion. You can check out Ian Hardett's Fantasy Football Podcast and get a leg up on your league. I'm going to need it next year because I finished very poorly last season in fantasy football. And get all your 2021 betting content with the PFF Forecast, another great podcast. So a lot of podcasts on the network. Make sure you tune into all of them. Yeah, and I think so. I talked earlier about not wanting to extrapolate anymore, a small sample size into projecting a full season from a quarterback. But you can do that if the guy has like true, almost transcendent arm talent. And that's what Spencer Rattler had. And that's what you saw on tape in the 15 to 25 throws that he had in 2019 coming off the bench in mop-up duty for Jalen Hurts. It was like, all right, this guy you could just see it already. And it wasn't even, he completed, some passes, but it wasn't even that. It was like, okay, you could see that if you gave this guy a full off season where he was the number one and weeks of game planning and stuff like that the arm talent was just going to show out no matter what. So that's where I think you can get away with extrapolating in the same way that in the opposite way that Tyler Shuck doesn't have that type of like unbelievable arm talent. So you don't want to extrapolate, even though he made some completions in 2019 at Oregon. Okay. So Spencer Rattler is far and away the number one. I think it's consensus anywhere you look. Number two, and I think there's a big drop off here from Spencer Rattler to kind of this next group. We have at number two, Sam Howell from North Carolina. And so my thing with Sam Howell, and I like kind of explained earlier, was I thought, true freshman, throws the ball pretty well down the field. Actually, throws the ball very well down the field. I didn't love his feet. And I thought that with all the production that was schemed up for him, you could see some fluctuations where it's like, okay, all of a sudden, maybe he has to get off of a first read and he can't handle that. And I thought that's what would happen. It kind of happened at the beginning of the season. But then, like I said, and we've talked about this before, from the middle of the Florida State game that they ended up losing, and they built themselves a big hole that they couldn't come out of, even though they were on fire in the second half. So basically from the second half of the Florida State game to the end of the season, just no mistakes. I think there's some timing issues where we talk about him like maybe as an NFL quarterback, but we don't have to do that right now. Just in terms of college football players, I think he just gets the job done, and I think that's why he's number two.
Yeah, 100%. And, I would love to see him in another offense, but he's the guy for this one. He's going to be good in it. And it's going to be interesting to see kind of, how he fares in 2021, just because you lose Diami Brown, Daz Newsome, your 1-2 punch at running back too, Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. That's a lot of lost talent there. And granted, there are several emerging guys. This is a very young team, a lot of rising talent. I have no doubt there's going to be some guys that steps up. But it might take some time there. And, like you said, a lot of his success, there was a good deep ball, but a lot of it's just play action shots. I mean, he has 59. This is unreal. 59 big time throws on deep passes, 20 plus yards downfield as a true freshman and sophomore. That's 15 more than any other quarterback in the Power Five. I mean, it's just an absurd rate. But I think, what has me optimistic going forward with Sam Howell is like he improved, without the play action, without rollout screens, RPOs. From a true drop back perspective, he really improved. I mean, he raised his grade about 10 grading points from his freshman to sophomore season to 86.2. And two, he also was a lot better under pressure. I mean, the dude would just panic under pressure as a true freshman. Had one of the lowest grades under pressure, actually, in all of college football. Raised it to one of the highest ones this past season. So I think those are the two most encouraging signs from him. But like you said, we're not talking about NFL here. From a pure college quarterback production standpoint, I think he is comfortably that number 2, but there is a clear notch below Spencer Rattler for sure.
Yeah, so North Carolina offense run by Phil Longo. It's one of these offenses that if I ever go and run an offense again, like I'm copy pasting it, right? Because they're not doing a lot. I think Longo, and I've heard him talk before, I think he comes from an air raid background. So the air raid is all about, we're not going to have a lot of concepts. We're going to rep them so much. And now he's incorporated RPOs into it. They've back-to-back years now, they've had top 5 RPO rate in college football in the FBS. So I think what you said about him getting better without all that stuff, taking off RPOs, taking off screen passes is super important. And look, he was a true freshman last year, and that's why his feet, and I think that's why the play under pressure was downright awful. Well, it's not because I don't think he was like, understanding how to play under pressure, if that makes sense. I think it's just technically he couldn't do it. I thought his feet were really bad last year, and they got better, and that's why you saw the improvement, and that's why you saw a guy who didn't do what I thought, which was going to be fluctuate and go down. He improved. Again, don't listen to me, because you shouldn't just assume that a guy who had a great true freshman year is going to fall in his true sophomore year. He got better, as he should have. So I think that to me is super important. You talk about the 2 receivers, losing them. I think the running game is going to be the most interesting thing for North Carolina to replace in terms of keeping Sam Howell at the production level that we think. Because all of a sudden, the offense was so good, but all of a sudden, if you're in more 3rd and longs, if you're in more 3rd and mediums, if you're in more 2nd and longs, that's when we're going to kind of reveal what type of quarterback I think he is. So that to me is the most interesting thing. And the offensive line should get better, but you are losing the break tackle machines, right? So a 3-yard gain was becoming a 7-yard gain. And, plays in the backfield that should have been tackled for a loss are neutral plays, or 1-yard gains or something like that. So that to me is where I think it'll be interesting. And when we talk about the NFL draft, this year is going to go a long way telling us if Sam Howell is that top 5 quarterback that a lot of people think he is.
And I will say, we were talking about some of the guys that they lost. I'm a big Bo Corrales guy. I think he's going to emerge as a very good top target for him. I was writing him up for the PFF College magazine, like we were talking about. I have high hopes for what he can do. And I think people are going to emerge, but that's a very good point about that running game, because It was dangerous. It was absolutely dangerous last year.
All right, let's move on to number 3, a guy who we both, I think we both really like just watching play. I think that's super important when we talk about this stuff, because really at the end of the day, we're trying to be entertained, right? Watching college football, and Derek King entertains you when you watch him play. So he's our number 3 guy. What are your thoughts on King?
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head there. There's some limitations there, but I think he's going to be the only quarterback that ranks probably top 5 in both passing grade and rushing grade in 2021. He's that good of a dual threat guy. Just this past season, you look at some of the returning passers, he had 88.2 passing grade, top 5 mark, 75.5 rushing grade, close to a top 5 mark when you filter out all those kind of the garbage snaps there. And leading way to the third best PFF overall grade behind only Spencer Rattler and Sam Howell. Big reason why he's here, number 3. And I think he's going to have good success there. Miami's got they got an interesting team there. I think there's some talent to work with. I think Charleston Rambo, he could emerge. I was really hoping he would emerge as that top guy for Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, me too.
Didn't really happen, but we got Marvin Mims anyway. That's going to be a great duo. I think Charleston Rambo is now in Miami. Him and Derek King, I think they're going to be cooking up some magic there. And so, again, not from an NFL perspective, but from a pure college quarterback standpoint, I think there's, I don't think there's really much of debate as him being the third best guy. But then I think it starts to get really interesting after this because our number 4 guy, I think we need to have just a huge asterisk by it because I have no idea what to expect.
So my thing with King is I feel like maybe I'm wrong about this. You tell me if I'm wrong. He reminds me a lot of Russell Wilson in certain ways. Shorter guy, little thicker, can run, but isn't going to like run away from you. Isn't gonna he's not like quick twitch per se. He just he makes you miss. He runs through you. And then you have the deep ball trajectory. I've talked about this before. He's throwing these moon balls. Now, like Sam Howell, the offense suits him probably more than Sam Howell, than the offense in North Carolina suits Sam Howell because you have a shorter quarterback in Derek King. So what do? You just throw 9 balls down the sideline the whole game, just like Russell Wilson. So I think the offense, again, and we'll talk about this. You talk about the number 4 guy. We're going to talk about this throughout this whole podcast is a lot of these guys are playing in these RPO heavy. So one read and creating a lot of production off a glance post that, is relatively easily read. And then you're going to get 8+ yards off of it. You're only looking at one receiver really. And you're talking about offenses that are just running go balls, deep passes. So, you hit a couple of them and your production goes off the charts, even if you miss a couple of them. So I think, King is part of that group, but I think when you put a tremendous talent like Howell, like King into these offenses, then the production goes crazy. I think both of us think we're going to see with Derek King. So that number 4 person, PFF's number 4 returning quarterback is Dillon Gabriel at Central Florida. This is a very, very important year for Gabriel, who is going to play under a completely different offense than he has done for the past 2 seasons. So they have Josh Heupel there as the head coach and play caller. Now they're moving to Gus Malzahn. With Josh Heupel, you have the extreme version of this type of heavy RPO, heavy deep shot offense. In every which way. I mean, even the way they run their screens is really weird. The way they line up their receivers as spread as you can humanly be, standing on the sideline and just saying, we are not going to let our quarterback ruin the game for us by putting a lot on his plate in terms of reading the middle of the field. I've talked about this so much. Once you start reading the middle of the field, it gets tricky. There's just a lot of people there, and you have to throw the football with a lot of touch, with a lot of timing, so that those people don't make a play on the ball. And once you throw outside, you can be off. I mean, honestly, you could just be off with your reads, with your ball placement, and chances are you're not going to have a negative play happen in terms of an interception or anything like that. It's in the receiver's hands or it's out of bounds. That's Heupel's offense. That is not necessarily Gus Malzahn's offense. Now, I do think that he's going to bring a lot of stuff, and he has changed his offense over the years, but it's different. And I think this is a big year for Dillon in terms of how much money he's going to make in the NFL draft, because he has a strong arm. He really does have a cannon, and it jumps off the tape when you watch it. But there's no such thing as timing in that offense. There's no such thing as playing quarterback in the same way that we talk about playing quarterback at the NFL level. So we just don't know anything about Dillon Gabriel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to echo everything you said there because, it was just go ball city there. And he took very good care of the ball but they also kind of helped him do that to a great extent. Still, it's pretty rare to see, a guy that's a true freshman and sophomore produce a top 10 turnover-worthy play rate. I mean, it's very uncommon, but again, like you said, it was a pretty simplistic, system. He didn't really have a whole lot of complex reads there, so I don't know. I'm kind of nervous. We placed him here at number 4, but I'm kind of nervous to see what he does. Great downfield passer. The touch is there. The arm strength, like you said. So we'll see. He's the biggest wild card of this group.
Yeah, and he's throwing, that arm is really nice. Like he's throwing, from one hash to the other hash. One hash to the other sideline, and putting it on a pretty nice rope. So like I think physically it's there for him. We just don't know anything about him as a quarterback. All right, moving to number 5, your boy, Michael Penix Jr. from Indiana. I think that in 2019 we saw, him and Peyton Ramsey split time, and he ends up being the starter that gets injured, and Peyton Ramsey comes in, and they both have pretty good seasons in Indiana. But I don't know if either of us would have thought he would have had a 2020 like he did. So for you, what do you see in Michael Penix Jr.?
I'm sorry. I gotta toot my own horn here. This is the guy I got right. Nice. I got some others wrong, but I thought Michael Penix, I thought he was going to light it up this year, just because everything that we saw when he was healthy in 2019. I mean, there was literally not one statistic category where he was bad at. Like, he was very good in every single one on a smaller sample, and I thought he was going to have a big breakout year. He did before tearing his ACL, of course, but there was just some very frustrating moments to watch him, because you're just like, it looked like he completely forgot to throw the ball. Like he forgot to, everything kind of fell apart from an accuracy perspective. He would have these severe bouts of inaccuracy that was almost like you can't be on the field. But then there was some times where he was just so pinpoint, you're just quite like, what's going on here? But again, everything that he has there, and the fact that he was under pressure, only 4 other FBS quarterbacks spent a higher rate of their dropbacks under pressure than Michael Penix last year, 41% of the time. And yet he still converted pressure to sacks at an extraordinarily low rate, 7.4%, which is the best in the FBS. And the dude stood in the pocket, guys all around him, defenders ready to kill him, and threw dimes repeatedly. And you go back to that Penn State game, you watch that final, I think it's still in regulation, the final couple minutes, that final drive that led him down the field to get it back in to eventually win the game. Shaka Toney and Jason Owe, now Odafe Owe, they were just literally in his face every single play, and the guy executed a comeback, and he just completely, blew that away. I mean, he actually shattered Patrick Mahomes' record that he had. He was number 1, number 2 for the most passing yards we've ever seen in a single game under pressure. His Ohio State outing topped that. He had over 300 passing yards under pressure. I really like this guy. Durability has been a big issue. Like I said, those bouts of inaccuracy have been too. But outside of that, there are very few bones to pick with this play. And I mean, this Hoosiers team, again, I think the biggest loss, undoubtedly, they lost Jamar Johnson. That's a big one. They lose Whop Phillier for the offense. That's a big one. I think the biggest loss is Kane Womack as the defensive coordinator, now the head coach at South Alabama. They're still going to have a similar type of system. Tom Allen, the head coach, did not want to get away from that this season. They want to run the same defense, but still, it's going to be worrisome to see how that defense kind of progresses. But they have the talent there with Michael McFadden, the off-ball linebacker, one of the best blitzers, probably the best blitzing off-ball linebacker in college football. Tywan Mullen there too. And as long as Michael Penix is healthy, man, this could be a pretty dangerous Indiana team once again.
And I think with, they lose Whop Phillier, I think a lot of people expected more from him in 2020. So I don't know if, I think that's a loss that they can handle, especially since they get back, if I'm not mistaken, they get back Ty Freifogel, who was elite for them, especially catching these balls down the sideline and stuff like that. So
the back shoulders.
Yeah, I think the inaccuracy stuff. I mean, he makes Penix makes some really nice decisions. It's the inaccuracy, like in my opinion, just comes from bad technique. Low elbow coming through. You're just not going to be as accurate as a guy who has better mechanics. That's the way I see it. And it kind of plays out in our charting with his accuracy. But great decision making. Like you said, offensive line was just abysmal last year. If that improves, because it's like, yeah, it's great if you have a guy who, like you said, doesn't take a lot of sacks, even though he gets pressured. You still don't want him pressured. Like, you'd rather him play in a clean pocket. You don't want him to have to do that for another season. So I think if the offensive line improves, I think we could be seeing a big season. Is this a team, is Indiana, I know you like Indiana, is it a team, especially since we don't know about the Ohio State quarterback situation, is this a team that you could see making some noise and winning the Big Ten maybe?
I think it's a bigger possibility than a lot of people think, just because of the murkiness with Ohio State's quarterback conversation. Obviously, with Stroud there's talent there. There's a whole lot of potential there. Would not be surprised if they have one of the better situations in college football this season. But there's still a lot of unknown there. There's still a lot of unknown with that team really as a whole. There is obviously incredible talent, the best, clear-cut best two wide receiver duo there with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. The quarterback situation, the cornerback room, there's potential there. I love Sevyn Banks. He was one of my breakout candidates last season. But I'm not going to lie, the dude got fried last season. People are talking about him as a first-round top 10 pick maybe. The physical tools are there, but the dude just did not show it. And so I think there should be a little bit more concern with Ohio State than there actually is. And I think if Indiana performs at the best of their abilities, they could possibly challenge them, and I would not be surprised to the slightest. And what's important, too, is that Peyton Hendershot, their tight end, he was looking like possibly a top 5 tight end in all of college football returning this past season. The dude just completely fell apart. He had some off-season issues that could have played into that, and obviously with COVID-19. But the dude, he just was completely a different player from a drop perspective, completely unproductive, vastly different from his 2019 season. So if they can get him back to form, got a transfer wide receiver coming in who I cannot remember the name of right now from Florida State. He's a dynamic threat. I think he's going to kind of be that Walt Phillier type of person for that offense that we've seen in past years. And two, also to echo that accuracy and ball trading stuff. You guys can't see it. I'm sorry, but me and Seth can. We can dive into PFF Ultimate. We can be selfish here, and we can dive into some of this data. We have 4 different ways we chart these. We chart these guys in more extensive processes, but we essentially bucket them into 4 different throws there. We have your accurate throws, your uncatchable throws, but then we also have your perfectly placed accurate plus and your catchable but inaccurate passes. And with Michael Penix Jr., his catchable but inaccurate passes, it's one of the lowest, if not the lowest rates in college football. But his accurate pass is up there as some of the highest, but so is his uncatchable pass. So it's literally boom or bust. Every single play, it's either right on the money or it's just not even in the receiver's vicinity.
All right, let's get to number 6, Matt Corral from Ole Miss. I thought that, it's funny, we talked a lot last offseason about who is going to be the quarterback for Ole Miss, because we saw John Rhys Plumlee have such a great season in 2019. And I'll never forget, even though LSU won the game, I'll never forget him absolutely torching the LSU defense. The whole Ole Miss offense absolutely torching the LSU defense on the ground in 2019. And I'd say a lot of that had to do with Grant Delpit playing on one leg, and he probably shouldn't have been playing. But regardless, they torched him on the ground, and Rhys Plumlee was like the man. He's going to be the future of Ole Miss. The coaching staff is fired. The offensive coordinator, Rich Rodriguez, is fired. Here comes Lane Kiffin and Matt Levy to run the offense. Matt Levy? No. Yeah, whatever. Jeff Levy to run the offense. And we were like, okay, well, it's probably going to be John Rhys Plumlee again. And then you realize when you see, after week 1, oh, right, this is the new Lane Kiffin offense that looks different than the one that we saw him run, last time he was in the Power 5 with Jalen Hurts at Alabama. It's like, no, he needs a guy who's going to throw the football. And John Rhys Plumlee's not that guy. John Rhys Plumlee works perfectly in Rich Rodriguez's zone read, quarterback run offense. Matt Corral, who had a pretty good passing grade last year when he was on the field, gets the nod as starting quarterback and has this unbelievable season. I think powered, like some other guys that we talked about, powered by a high RPO, downfield passing attack. But I thought he did some really, really interesting things. I thought he was like, when he had a clean pocket, I thought he really understood how to get to open receivers with his eyes, with his shoulders, and all that stuff. So I like Corral, but again, with all these guys, like, we don't know if they're just a product of the offense, or when we talk about them in terms of NFL worthy, in the draft, are they like valuable outside of this offense?
Yeah, and like you always say with Matt Corral, he's one of those guys that is capable of manipulating defenders. And it's rare to see that from college quarterbacks. But then at the same time, you go back to that Arkansas game, and I don't know what to think of him. Like, is he a product of Lane Kiffin or not? And just because you see situations where he's not really, but then you see situations like that where you're like, you definitely should not have thrown that ball. I don't know what you're really thinking there. I'm just kind of forcing it there to your first read. And that's how you ended up, I think, with like 6 interceptions, like a 30.0 passing grade or something like that. That was the only performance that I was very disappointed in Matt Corral, but he had several that were, I think he cracked the team of the week in our weekly article that we drop every Sunday morning. I think he was the quarterback more than once, at least a couple of times. And so, he's a good college quarterback. I think we can safely call him that right now. He's this top 10 good college quarterback. If we're looking at him about the NFL, I think we still need a full season to really kind of grasp, what kind of quarterback he is.
Yeah, I agree. I think another year. Good thing he has another year to come back and play for Kiffin. I think that offense is going to be wild again. I think they're going to score a lot of points again. So I'm excited to see what they do. All right, at number 7, my guy Grayson McCall, Coastal Carolina. Obviously the unbelievable season, Cinderella season that Coastal Carolina had. A lot of it is on the back of Grayson McCall being super accurate. Like, at the end of the day, he was so accurate. Redshirt freshman. Took over from another quarterback. I forgot his name. The Coastal Carolina quarterback from the past 2 years prior. Took over, and they were just rolling. And this is interesting because it's in the same way where the offense really does, the scheme really helps a college quarterback. Coastal Carolina's scheme does help them, but in a different way than kind of this super spread offense, high RPO rate offense, deep ball offense that we've been talking about with Ole Miss and UCF and all these teams. With Coastal Carolina, the interesting thing is that it's almost like a true triple option offense, and what that is doing is forcing safeties to vacate deep responsibility, because now you're running all this play action and stuff, and you can't, and you'd love to do that stuff against a triple option team and have the safeties account for whether it's the quarterback if he keeps it, or the pitch man who's going to get the pitch from the quarterback on the outside. You want both safeties on either side of the field to be able to quickly trigger and react down and make a play on the option attack. Problem is, and that works when you talk about playing against Navy, playing against Army, playing against Air Force, playing against Georgia Southern, let's say. That works because they can't recruit, and they won't find quarterbacks that can make defense pay for that type of scheme. Grayson McCall, on the other hand, he's too good. I think he's propped up by the offense a bit because of what it forces defenses to do, like I said. But still, he is wickedly accurate, throws the ball down the field really nice, doesn't make mistakes. So it's like, how can you really figure out how to defend a true triple option team who has a quarterback who is that accurate? I would not want to be a defensive coordinator on their schedule next season.
Yeah, it's just like the perfect marriage, right?
Yeah.
You got the perfect storm there. It's just not. It's a great thing there. They're the Cinderella story last year, and it's because of Grayson McCall, like you said, his ability to beat defenses on the ground, but also through the air. The guy had one of the 5 best uncatchable pass rates when throwing beyond the line of scrimmage. That's rare to see from a triple option quarterback. And he's 7th best big time throw rate right there on elite passing grade. It was deadly last year, and it's not going to change. It's going to be another deadly option attack. I'm excited to see Coastal Carolina there. We'll talk about him more later, but I got to bitch him too right now. Isaiah Likely, the tight end for Coastal Carolina, one of my favorite players in all of college football. That guy is just a phenomenal player at the position, just always been underrated. Be on the lookout for him this year.
Yeah, he's the guy that they move around a bunch and he gets split out and you can really make some plays. I really like him too. All right, number 8. Now this one is interesting because really he's 8, but he's really like probably number 1. We just don't have a lot of, we only have like 100 throws on him, and that's DJ Uiagalelei from Clemson. Number 1 overall recruit, number 1 quarterback recruit, I believe, 10th nationally last year. Comes in, looks really good as a true freshman against 2 pretty interesting defenses, in Boston College and Notre Dame, while Trevor Lawrence is out with COVID. Again, this is a guy who really could be anywhere on this list, depending on how you feel about him. We have him at 8. His arm is incredible. I mean, like, I don't even know what else to say. It's incredible in a way that's like very different than like Spencer Rattler has an incredible arm, super arm talent in this kind of like, it's like his arm is almost like elastic, Spencer Rattler. And with the quick release stuff like that. With DJ, it's just power. It is just absolute power. And he can throw balls that I don't think. Well, I shouldn't say throw balls that Trevor Lawrence couldn't throw, because Trevor Lawrence was special too. But it's going to be different.
Seth. You could say it. DJ's better than Trevor Lawrence. He's got a better arm than him.
It's going to be different.
That's going to be on a quote graphic. Just wait. It's going to be on the quote graphic on PFF.com on Twitter.
I already said that Trevor Lawrence was a flag football quarterback, so there's nothing. I can't go below that at this point. He's probably going to be special. I don't think that you should overthink this at all. We already seen him in 2 games, and he was awesome. I think the accuracy is not like perfect, but also with an off season, second year, maybe it gets like 10% better, and he is just the best quarterback in the country. I think the range is significant that he could be the best quarterback in the country after this season.
Right, yeah. And if I had to say anybody that's not like in the top 3 right now is going to claim a top 3 spot, it's DJ. I mean, like you said, he had an 83.6 passing grade, 5 big-time throws, not a single turnover-worthy play in those 2 games against Boston College and Notre Dame. That arm is just, like you said, it's just so powerful. I mean, the dude just throwing frozen ropes left and right. And like you were saying, the accuracy isn't perfect. But, I believe you wrote an article after those 2 games. There were some inaccurate throws there, and you were talking about some of the mechanical issues, but that's nothing really major to worry about. This is very projection based. I really struggled with where, really to place DJ. I thought 8th was kind of fair, but I fully expect him, this former 5-star, to be a top 5, top 3 player. If he's the only one that I think is going to really challenge Spencer Rattler for that top spot. But for now, we have to place him 8, just because, like you said, like 100 free throws. I think Seth got muted here.
What you don't want to do is extrapolate from like mop-up duty throws, but he had 2 weeks where he was the starter and he looked great. Just in general, he looked great, and he looked great for a true freshman. So yeah, I expect really big things from him in 2021. All right, number 9. To me, this is an interesting one, but we'll get to that. Number 9, Myles Brennan from LSU. Got injured after 3 starts. Put up really good numbers in those 3 starts, even though LSU lost the Mississippi State game. He looked really well. Basically, after the first quarter, he was awesome in that game. What do you see out of Myles Brennan that you think he is a top 10 quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I cannot grasp like what the big public the discrepancy here, because at least I am. I'm so much different and higher on Myles Brennan than everybody else. Some people are saying he might even start this season, which I would say that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, even though the team underperformed as a whole in those 3 starts he had, his downfield passing was on par with Mac Jones, and you look at his deep passing grade, he was actually higher than Mac Jones in the conference, for the best in the SEC, right behind him when going to 10+ yards in passing grade. He showed a quality arm there. He handled pressure exceptionally well, which we always talk about. Those first-year quarterbacks, you typically don't see that. He handled it pretty well. You go back to that game against Mizzou. I mean, he made some unbelievable throws under pressure. I think as long as he's starting, this LSU team could be a sneaky dangerous one in 2020 or 2021 rather. Especially if Bryce Young doesn't end up being the guy that a lot of people think he's going to be, which I think is a bigger possibility than a lot of people are just expecting. He's going to come in, he's going to be Mac Jones to a production level, he's going to be a top 5 kind of guy, Heisman candidate. I think we need to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. If Myles Brennan is a starter, and I hope to God he is, I think he's going to produce at an elite level. I mean, he showed too much that impressed me. Just 10 big-time throws to one turnover-worthy play in those 3 games. I think this guy's a top 10 quarterback, and I can't understand, why some people don't even think he should be starting in that offense.
Okay, so I'll give you my thoughts later on Myles Brennan because I have him in either my sleepers category or my overrated category. So let's get to number 10, and it's a guy that we were hoping to see more out of, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, and that's Kedon Slovis from USC. He came in and he was super accurate in 2019, and he's still accurate in 2020. But like you said, he just felt like he just forced too much in 2020, and you're just like, why? Like, why make these type of throws? This isn't your game. Like, just keep it simple, and keep it simple, stupid type of thing. Now, one of the issues, and we talked about this last week on the podcast, like, hey, the offense made it difficult on him. So whereas all these guys that we've talked about, their offense made it easy on him, with Slovis, you're getting this air raid attack, and defenses are dropping 8 guys and, playing zone and passing off all the mesh routes and stuff like that. And there's not a lot of space for him to go find people. And, you're not seeing a lot of man coverage, which is not helping USC because they probably have better receivers than, the rest of the Pac-10 has DBs. So that's not helping Slovis. And yeah, I just think it was a tough season for him in a lot of ways. I think he could have played better. I'm not saying he's blameless, but I think the offense didn't do him any favors. Like I said, unlike some of the other quarterbacks we've had on the list.
Yeah, this is when this list kind of differs from like NFL potential because De'Aaron King's number 3, Kedon Slovis has so much more potential to be a dangerous NFL quarterback. And it was, like you said, very frustrating. And I mentioned this earlier too at the beginning, is that, as a true freshman in 2019, the guy was thrown into the fire. He was a 3-star recruit, no expectations to play. JT Daniels gets hurt towards his ACL. Becomes a starter right away, comes out 80.8 passing grade. And to see a true freshman quarterback in that type of scenario produce a grade above 80.0 in their first year, that's incredible. And paired with that accuracy, which, I said was on Joe Burrow level, he just showed all the fixings to eventually, get rid of those 1 or 2 head-scratching forced throws that he had as a true freshman. Those didn't go away. I think they kind of upticked just a little bit. He was virtually just kind of the same player as he was as a true freshman, just not a lot of growth there. I mean, his passing grade was just about identical, if I recall correctly, and those with PFF Premium Stats, college football, go check it out. I'm pretty sure it was within 1 grading point of his true freshman season. And so I think he is also on that kind of, I don't want to say that. I don't know. Maybe he's kind of like DJ in that he could be that number 2 guy right after Spencer Rattler. But we need to see it. He has the potential. The potential's there. But he's kind of like skating on thin ice there, holding that number 10 spot. That's for sure.
Yeah, let me make a quick correction as I look at it now. USC was middle of the pack in terms of the Power 5, in terms of how much man coverage they saw. They saw a ton of zone, but they did see a little bit of man. So it was kind of split. So that takes away from what I just said. Anyways, that's our top 10. We had put one guy on the list in the article as kind of like the asterisk, number 11, but kind of an asterisk. And that's Emory Jones, because we haven't seen a lot of him. Again, mop-up duty. But it's a guy that we both, and I think a lot of people are realizing, is really good. And when he has come in, he has looked really good. Here's my theory about Emory Jones, because I've heard it from people. Well, he couldn't beat out Felipe Franks and Kyle Trask. Here's my response to that is, I wonder, now with Felipe, I don't know, but with Kyle Trask from 2019 to 2020, our issue with Kyle Trask was, yeah, he's accurate, but the decision making, there's a bunch of plays per game where he is throwing to the other team. And he was very lucky that those plays weren't intercepted, because a lot of them, not only would they have been intercepted, they probably would have taken back for touchdowns. And so that pumps up his stock enough that he was the clear starter going into 2020. And then he improved, like we've said, like he improved and he was awesome in 2020. But I wonder if those dropped interceptions were actually interceptions by Trask in 2019, if Emory Jones is just not the starter in 2020, because, the public perception would have changed dramatically on what type of player Kyle Trask is. Now, obviously, you got to trust the coaching staff to say, hey, we still think Kyle Trask is better, even though we've seen these dropped interceptions. Obviously, they've seen them in the coaching staff. But I also think that public perception can seep into coaching staffs too. So I think that I don't think you should be looking at Emory Jones as, he couldn't beat out these two quarterbacks. I think you're just looking at him, and when he was on the field, a four-star recruit, and when he was on the field, he looked really, really good.
Yeah, 100%. And when I wrote this article, which was a couple of weeks, I get my days mixed up, so about 10 days ago, he was plus 6,600 to win the Heisman. Our guy Mike Renner wrote a early 2022 mock draft, had him going in the top 10. Emory Jones is now plus 4,000 to win the Heisman, which is still not good enough. I think he should be getting – Jaden Daniels is ahead of him, and that's another one we got right. We knew he was not going to be good last year. Guess what? He was not good. I just cannot see Arizona State being a successful team, even though there's some pieces there in place for them to be good. I like the offensive line. Jermaine Lowell, he's one of my favorite players in all of college football. Ever since they had that scheme tweak, moved him to 3-tech, where he's always thrived in his career, but was playing more defensive end. Now he's playing exclusively 3-tech, dominant. I'm speaking too long on him. We'll get to him later. There's some pieces there, but he's just not that good of a quarterback. I think Emory Jones should be top 5 in Heisman odds, even though we've seen him on a limited sample. And like you said, that's what I've always been saying, man. If there's so many dropped interceptions from Kyle Trask, where we were a few of them away, just probably 3 or 4 of them away, Emory Jones would have been the starter last year. Kyle Trask wasn't even been picked in the NFL draft. It's absolutely mind-boggling. That's why before the season we kept saying, let's be cautious on him just a little bit. In those first few games of the year, they were rough. He did have an excellent debut, but then those next 3 to 4 really weren't all that great. It was very propped up by the scheme. Still kind of was down the road, and that's why a lot of people had some issues with him as a pro prospect, along with the physical tools issue. But again, I'm digressing. Emory Jones, he's my biggest sleeper. I think he's probably going to inch his way into that top 5. On the sample that we have seen throughout his career, 87 career passing tips, 80.6 passing grade, pairs that with an 81.7 rushing grade. For perspective, the only quarterbacks to have a passing grade and rushing grade above 80.0 this past season was Justin Fields. And obviously the sample size is vastly different, but the dude can make plays on the ground. He did show some legit arm talent. And Dan Mullen finally has, the true dual threat quarterback that, he hasn't really had since, Dak Prescott. He has him at Florida now. It's just
Nick Fitzgerald was no, I'm kidding. He's not dual threat. He was just a runner. He's not dual threat.
It was a forced dual threat. Yeah. But yeah. Anyway, I would have just loved to have seen Emory Jones with the offense they had last year.
I know.
I would have loved to have seen that. What concerns me is just the supporting cast is not that good. I think the defense is going to be a lot better, but the offense, just outside of Emory Jones, it's not looking too hot.
Okay, so that's the list with one sleeper. I have 4 guys on my sleeper list. I just added one. And I have 3 guys on my overrated list. So let's start with overrated. I think you just hit on one of them. So I'll give you 2. So my overrated are Dillon Gabriel. Again, it's exactly like we said. We just don't know. Cannon, but played in such a fake offense that it's hard to really know, but we will get a pretty good glimpse of him this season. Number 2, Jaden Daniels, like you said, I know a lot of people like him and he's like super fast. Like he is really fast, but he just has trouble, man, throwing the ball accurately. Like, it is not good. Like, you just can't. And I don't know. It's been 2 years now. So just to expect him to, now he's going to be a true junior, like just to expect him to increase his, let's say his like accurate throw rate by 20%, which is probably where it needs to jump to, like that, I wouldn't bet on that. So he's on my overrated list. And like I was saying before, my third on my overrated list is Myles Brennan, because I think he did look good. I just don't know about the defenses. So Missouri's defense not good. Vanderbilt's defense no good last year. Mississippi State had a pretty good defense last year, and he did play well against them. But I think for me with Brennan is like we still just haven't seen him so much. We saw 3 games, 2 of them against awful defenses. So I was like, yeah, he threw the ball down the field really well. But I thought his decision making, he didn't throw into coverage for sure, but I thought his decision making needs to be a lot better for like a 12-game season or a full season. That's why he's on my overrated list. Who are your overrated guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair with Myles Brennan. There were definitely some missed opportunities.
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about that during the season. Definitely some missed opportunities there. Outside of Emory Jones, I would say an underrated guy, definitely not a top 10 guy, but I think a guy to watch is Connor Bazelak, the Missouri quarterback. He really impressed me. I think one of the most kind of like under the radar performers. Just a consistent guy. After earning that starting job there, performed exceptionally well from a clean pocket. 88.4 clean pocket passing grade, the most stable area of quarterback play. Struggled under pressure, but again, we always talk about it. First-year starters, they're going to struggle under pressure. It's rare to see them not struggle under pressure. And he performed exceptionally well throughout the season. I think he's one to keep an eye on. Overrated, I don't want to hone in on Jaden Daniels again. I think, Spencer Sanders is up there. Oklahoma State quarterback.
For sure.
And, we kept saying Shane Illingworth should have remained the starter once, everybody was healthy there. I think he is probably one of the more overrated guys. Looking at some of the other quarterbacks in here, Brock Purdy, I don't even know what to say about him.
I don't even know what people think about him right now. To tell you, I couldn't tell you if he's overrated or underrated because I don't know what the consensus is on Brock Purdy.
Exactly. I'm pissed at him. I'm pissed at Brock. We have a love-hate relationship. He let me down. He let everybody down. He was supposed to be the next big thing, and I don't even know what happened. He just completely fell apart. Graham Mertz, I think he is still underrated a little bit. I actually sent you a DM with an article saying he said he played the season hurt.
Plus, I'm going to go ahead. COVID, I believe he was out for like 3 weeks.
Right, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and sign with Graham. That was the reason for his kind of downfall after that first game where he just absolutely carved up Illinois, which I think was probably the most insane starting debut I've seen. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. He had like a 93.9 passing grade for the game, one of the best we saw against a Power 5 defense. Well, if you want to call the Illinois Power 5 defense. But anyway, I think he's being a little bit underrated heading into next season.
Okay, and I'll give you my 4 sleepers. Are you ready for number 1?
What's that?
Number 1 is Bo Nix. Because, look, do I think Bo Nix is a great quarterback? No. But he's gotten so much slack the last 2 years because he hasn't, just lived up to any of the billing that everyone thought. He's been bad. Like, he's not been a good quarterback. Therefore, like, he's kind of, in a sense, become underrated because, look, he's going to be a junior. He's going to have 2 years under his belt. Maybe this is the year that it finally happens. I don't really believe it, but I think he is kind of a sleeper just because the media has shifted so far. It's swung so far the other way with him that he's almost a sleeper, even though I don't really believe it. All right, my other 3, Talia Tagovailoa from Maryland. Thought he did a lot of – his grade doesn't reflect it, but I thought he did – and we were both in agreement on this one, I think. I think he did a lot of good things. I think Mike Loxley's offense isn't that user-friendly. I think it takes some getting used to. And I think that's why I would project him to have a pretty good season for Maryland. They got a nice receiver, if I'm not mistaken, in like a 5-star receiver. I think he's a good quarterback. I really do. Number 3, Kenny Pickett from Pitt, because here's a guy who plays in probably the least user-friendly offense, and he's coming back for his like 9th year playing at Pitt, so like he's gonna understand the offense. Just got to make better decisions with the football, be a little more accurate. But I think with Kenny Pickett, I just wonder, what if you stuck him in Josh Heupel's offense? What if you stuck him in Lane Kiffin's offense? Like, what would he look like in those situations? And what would Matt Corral, what would Dillon Gabriel look like in Pitt's offense? You know what I mean? So that's why I think he's a little bit of a sleeper. And the number one sleeper, because we haven't talked about him, I'm surprised we haven't mentioned him, is Malik Willis, right? Like, I think the hype for him as like a top 5 pick and like a Heisman Trophy winner is a little too much. But as everyone said, I mean, he's the most electric player in college football. He throws the ball deep. He runs around. He makes these unbelievable plays with his legs. So he needs to be a tick quicker in his processing, and I think that could come for sure. I think there's some development that needs to be there. The accuracy lets him down for sure. But in terms of electricity, it's like him and Derek King as like the two guys who are probably the most electric players, the two guys who you want to watch on Saturdays. Malik Willis has got to be up there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, Malik Willis is interesting. Like, he didn't make the top 10. Again, we're not projecting NFL potential here. I mean, what just concerns me, it's not what he can do on the ground, because obviously he's one of the best running quarterbacks in college football. It's what he does through the air. I mean, you look at his, 2 highest passing grades of last season. They came against West Carolina and UMass. I mean, that speaks for itself. And that second one, which was UMass, was an 83.6. I mean, you look at, Zach Wilson faced all this easy competition. The dude, you don't like Zach Wilson, but it was 83.6 on the reg.
Yeah, I think there is like, okay, I might not love Zach Wilson, especially as a number 2 pick in the draft, but he did what he was supposed to do against bad competition, right? He put up 90 plus grades a lot, and Malik Willis didn't do that.
Right, and he had multiple turnover-worthy plays in over half of his games. And so, like, the potential's there. Yeah, like you said, he's just an electric player. The playmaking ability is there. We just need to see some improvements from a collegiate perspective, before we can say he's a top 10 quarterback in all of college football. And when you brought that up, one that comes to mind, I think Carson Strong, there's been some hype with him. And he could put up some deep passing numbers. I mean, if I recall correctly, he had like 4 50-plus yard touchdowns through the air. And that no other college quarterback had more than one last season. And he did it on a shortened season. I think he has a little bit more potential to be a top 10 quarterback than Malik Willis in college football standards. Desmond Ridder, he's not even on the radar. I just can't really see the hype at all from a passing perspective. It's just not there. Like, Malik Willis, there's something there a little bit. With Desmond Ridder, I just cannot see him putting it all together. I mean, the grading's not there. You'll get the clean pocket stuff. It's just really bad all around. Cincinnati's going to have a dangerous team again. And if he can perform like he did down the stretch, they're going to be a top 10 program probably. But he's not a top 10 guy or even a top 15, 20, 25 maybe guy.
All right, we got to end it here, but like, man, there's so many guys that I'd want to talk about. Like, we both like Jaden Delora at Washington State. He might even start because they went and got Jack Guarantano to be a transfer. You have a guy like Hendon Hooker playing now in Josh Heupel's offense. He might be the starter in Tennessee. He transfers over from Virginia Tech. Like, like not a great passer, but like you put him in Tennessee's, with Heupel's offense now, it could be interesting.
Dude,
a lot of guys.
He's my dark horse to produce an elite 90.0 grade, because like you say, fake ass college offense. He's perfect for it.
He's perfect for it. JT Daniels. Like a lot of hype behind JT Daniels.
He's also one of my overrated guys, just because, again, he had an exceptional first game. That first drive, I remember we talked about this before. I DM'd you and I said, "Well, that see JT Daniels is back. Guess there's no hype." And then he proceeded to completely just fry up Mississippi State. But again, that's Mississippi State. The next 3 games left a lot to be desired, in my opinion. That South Carolina win solely on the run game. That Cincinnati game was absolutely brutal. I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit on JT Daniels, but he's probably that mid-tier guy.
Phil Jurkovec, like, there's a lot to like about his game. Ben Roethlisberger type of player, but a lot. He could be a sleeper, I'm trying to think.
Some
Dylan Morris, I kind of like.
Throws.
Yeah, I like Dylan Morris from Washington. You know, I've kind of come off the bandwagon a bit, but there's still some stuff that I like with Georgia Tech's Jeff Sims. Like, there's just a lot of guys that I think are interesting. And honestly, if we just name them all and say they're all sleepers, then we're gonna get at least one of them right. But anyways, we gotta go. Treash, nice having you back, and we will do this next week with a different position group. So excited to get your thoughts on whatever position group we decide over the next week. All right, so that's it. That was a PFF College Football Podcast, and thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.